Hey everyone, it's Pastor Scott Fielder, and welcome to another edition of Hope Lutheran Church in Hollywood's online midweek Wednesday devotional. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Please make sure to like or subscribe on either of those platforms so that you can get notified about not only when these devotionals go live, but also our online Sunday service as well. Thank you so much again for all your support in any way that you are able to do so, whether it's with your time, talent, or with money. We appreciate all the ways that people have been supporting us all through this past year, and it's been an interesting one, but we've been able to get through it because of the generosity of people like you. Our reading for our devotional this week comes from the book of Job, chapter 5, verses 8 through 16. As for me, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause. He does great things and unsearchable, marvelous things without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends waters on the fields. He sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He frustrates the devices of the crafty so that their hands achieve no success. He takes the wise in their own craftiness, and the schemes of the wily are brought to a quick end. They meet with darkness in the daytime and grope at noonday as in the night. But he saves the needy from the sword of their mouth, from the hand of the mighty. So the poor have hope, and injustice shuts its mouth. Here ends the reading. As anybody who has read the book of Job knows, the writer of this book has always had an incredibly unique perspective on how God sort of interacts in their life and in everyone's life in general. This unique part being that God is really there and in control, and almost even has sort of a hand in the highs and the lows of that person's experience. So many unfortunate things happen to Job, yet his faith never wavers. Now, many of the things that happen to Job, are quite significant, but in this particular section of the book in chapter 5, he says, God does great and unsearchable things, marvelous things without number. Now, if I were going to talk about marvelous things that have happened, I think people would expect stories of, visions and miracles, things like we hear that Jesus does all throughout his ministry. But why does Job say right after talking about the things that God does being marvelous and being great, he says God gives rain on the earth and sends waters on the fields? Again, when I think of marvelous things, especially all the marvelous things that God could potentially do, I have to say that giving rain to the earth and water to the fields is not the first thing that I would have thought of. Then Job goes on to talk about how God takes those who are mourning and lifts them to safety, that God saves the needy. Why does Job see these things as being marvelous? Again, when it comes to God, whom we see as having great power, these are not immediately things that would maybe come to mind. But I think it says a little bit more about our perspective than maybe it actually does about Job's. If those who are grieving are being lifted up and the needy are being saved by God, is that not marvelous then? To me, that means that we do not see these kinds of, really big problems as really big problems, which is just not the case. Our perspective is that if that's something that you do, if it's not marvelous, then the problem isn't that big of a deal. But these are the kinds of things that we are called to do in our communities. We're called to surround those who are grieving and be there for them in whatever way it is that they need, whether it's simply through our presence or, sometimes maybe through words or just sometimes our actions alone. When someone is in that place, we are called to serve them just as God has lifted those who are grieving and helped them feel safe. And the same goes for those who are in need that Job speaks of, for the poor who need some hope. These are serious issues that those who commit themselves to should be seen as doing something marvelous, right? Something of great value. Sometimes we need a good perspective check. And I think that we have to be a little bit more purposeful about that rather than just sort of waiting for, maybe some circumstance to do that for us. I feel like so often in my life when I do sort of get this perspective check, it happens because there's, some sort of thing that happens to me. It's not something that I go out and try and kind of dial in myself. I'm not super purposeful all the time. And that's, one of the beauties of the season of Lent. It's a time to make a change, whether taking on something or giving something up, to do something that maybe gives us a little bit of a different perspective and hopefully helps us to see that these amazing things that God is doing are truly important, and they are marvelous because the issues behind them they are something that needs to be addressed. The people who are grieving, people who are poor, who are in need, service to them is something that should be seen as marvelous because it's an issue when those things are prevalent, and they are truly important things that, especially as people of faith, we are called to do. Amen.